dizaine, quinzaine de pages. Ouais.
C'est le next. Ouais. Tu veux que je l'exporte Ah ouais, tu peux pas tout exporter. 32 diapos. Et si tu sélectionnes toutes les diapos
Pour reprendre, ça marche pas.
where travel impact data just clicked.
There we go. Bonjour tout le monde. Comment allez-vous? Très bien. Oui, il y a 30 ans, j'ai appris le français à l'école. Et c'est dommage que peu de gens dans le monde anglophone ne le parlent pas. Mon problème est que j'ai appris espagnol després de français. Et je parle une mixture, un mélange de los dos. Anyway, that's why I'm going to speak in English. And I do really respect the fact that we are in Paris, in France, and English is the language we are using. So thank you so much to everybody, all the French speakers here, for your generosity in letting this happen. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? Do you see the rain last night and the weather today? It's fantastic. I'm Rajan Datar. I'm a journalist in current affairs and specializing in travel. I was actually here in Paris last year to preview the Olympics from a tourism perspective for the BBC, and it was an amazing achievement, largely using existing infrastructure, which I thought was really interesting. And as we're going to hear throughout the day, Paris is positioning itself at the forefront of sustainable tourism and transport. It's also fitting being here because did you know, you probably do know, the Eiffel Tower, I've heard it said, was built nearly 130 years ago, and it was the first building to be created purely as a tourist attraction, which is an interesting thought. So there we go. And that was for the great exhibition, the World Exhibition, wasn't it? Yeah, in 1896, I think. And I suspect that part of the problem is that many tourists think that Machu Picchu and the Great Pyramid were also built as purely as tourist attractions. And that is one of the problems we are facing today. Okay, today, in a very different world, where tourism continues to grow at an incredible rate, we're tackling the urgent problems that currently face our industry. And my big thing is, we must not kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. We must look for honest analysis to make sure that we don't ruin the world, we don't destroy local communities, and that is what sustainability is all about. I want to say one thing right now. Can we all show huge solidarity, please, with the people of Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, and Bahamas, with the terrible catastrophe that's happened to them. On behalf of all of us at AWFT, we wish to extend our heartfelt solidarity to our friend, Minister Edmund Bartlett, who is a cherished member of the GTTRC, the Resilience Council, which is closely associated with the A World for Travel. Okay, it is now my great pleasure to introduce a man who, with Frederick Van Hoot, A World for Travel is very much their vision, their baby. It's the 6th edition of this conference. Each one gets better and better. I'm glad it's kind of come home. And it's a great privilege to bring him on the stage. So please welcome Christian Delhomme, Secretary General, A World for Travel.
Thank you, Rajan. I'm sure, I was saying so yesterday, maybe at the end, Monsieur le Ministre, we can get Rajan the citizenship for France, because I think he deserves it, really. Monsieur le Ministre, Excellencies, Ministers, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, dear friends, it's my pleasure to say it in French now. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue. Bienvenue vraiment à Paris, a city where reflection and action have always met, where the quest for meaning has the power to shape destiny. More than 2 centuries ago, after the revolution, France was rebuilding a weakened economy while England was racing into the industrial revolution. In 1801, under Napoleon Bonaparte's leadership, a visionary institution was founded right here, la Société d'encouragement de l'industrie nationale, the Society for the Encouragement of National Industry, based in this very Hôtel de l'Industrie in the heart of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Its mission was ambitious, to seek out the world's most innovative ideas and to share knowledge capable and shaping the nation's future. It supported extraordinary pioneers. Gustave Eiffel was a member. You mentioned Eiffel Tower. Gustave Eiffel was a member of this society. Pasteur, Louis Pasteur, the Curie family, Pierre and Marie Curie, the Lumière brothers, and others, and whose discoveries continues to illuminate humanity. Today, this institution remains recognized as serving the public good and honors innovation through the Chaptal and Montgolfier, who was member, prizes, a powerful reminder that humanity advances where it learns, when it invents, and when it believes in tomorrow. And nowadays it's very valuable. That's the lesson this institution still teaches us. When A Word for Travel was founded by Frédéric Van Hout and myself, we dreamed of creating more than an event, a living space of transformation. From the very beginning, our purpose was to make travel a true force for change, for the planet, for societies, and for economies. Over the years, the Forum has mirrored the journey of our industry, and in many ways of our world. From survival to resilience, from awareness to responsibility, from purpose to measurable impact. This 6th edition marks a new stage, that of delivery. In 2025, our theme, Tourism Faces Uncertainty, captures both our challenges and our duty to respond. Uncertainty is not paralysis. It is an invitation to rethink, to reimagine the role of travel in a time of profound disruption, geopolitical, environmental, technological, and human. During these 2 days, we will confront these questions openly and constructively. We will explore how travel can remain viable and responsible amid economic turbulences. We will discuss the transformation of governments, the decarbonization of mobility, and the role of investment and regulation in building trust. We will reflect on AI and digital ethics, on educational and the next generation, and on how to preserve authenticity in a world of acceleration. And we look beyond the headlines to understand how tourism can become a force for cooperation, inclusion, and peace. Tourism is not merely an industry of leisure. It is an industry of meaning. It reveals our interdependence, our vulnerability, and our creative strength. It is a bridge between cultures and a mirror of our collective conscience. That is why here in Paris, we reaffirm that leadership today means partnership. Between the North and the South, between innovation and responsibility, between economy and ecology, we must learn to act not against each other, but together. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to our 90 speakers coming from 30 countries, and to our partners, with a special mention to our strategic partners, and to our global partners, first our long-standing ally, the Global Travel Tourism Resilience Council. I would like also to acknowledge the WTTC, UN Tourism, and the GTTP for their continued support. My thanks go as well to the Hôtel de l'Industrie and its president, Olivier Mousson, a friend, to our teams, and to all those who, since the very first edition, have believed in and contributed to this journey. And finally, a special word for my friend, Christian Montey, whose unwavering commitment to France's tourism excellence continue to inspire us all and me personally. Mesdames et messieurs, Paris reminds us that travel is not only a movement, it is a quest for meaning. Every journey begins within ourselves. through curiosity, humility, and hope. Allow me to close with the words of Marcel Proust, whose wisdom still guides us. Le véritable voyage de découverte ne consiste pas à chercher de nouveaux paysages, mais à avoir de nouveaux yeux. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. May this forum help us to see, to understand, and to act with the new eyes and renewed courage. Merci, thank you, and welcome to Award for Travel 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce a leader deeply committed to the future of our sector, Serge Papin, Minister in charge of small and medium-sized enterprises, trade, craft, tourism, and purchasing power, has long championed a vision of economic vitality anchored in sustainability, innovation, and social cohesion. We are grateful, Monsieur le Ministre, for your presence here today, addressing words to the tourism community for the first time, still you have been appointed, and for your support to the tourism ecosystem, an ecosystem built on millions of dedicated entrepreneurs and workers who brings travel to life every day across our territories. Please join me in welcoming Serge Papin, Minister. Monsieur le Ministre.
Quelle pression, mon cher Christian. Monsieur le Premier ministre, je ne sais pas si Gabriel Attal est ici, en tous les cas je le salue parce que je crois qu'il va vous rejoindre. Monsieur le ministre, cher Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, qui est peut-être aussi dans la salle, mesdames, messieurs les élus, mesdames, messieurs, chers amis, écoutez, je suis très heureux, c'est un vrai plaisir d'être avec vous ce matin pour mon premier discours à l'extérieur. Voilà. Et je le fais évidemment en tant que ministre des PME, du pouvoir d'achat, du commerce, de l'artisanat, mais du tourisme, principalement, bien sûr. C'est un portefeuille important qui m'a été confié par le président de la République et le Premier ministre, qui m'honore, mais qui m'oblige, car il représente le ministère du quotidien des Français et de nos entreprises. Et je m'efforce de rapprocher les deux, de réconcilier parfois même quand c'est nécessaire. Et pour ma première allocution, donc au forum Award for Travel, dont je remercie les organisateurs, je veux rappeler que le tourisme est un moteur important de notre économie, de notre consommation et un pilier du quotidien de nombreux Français. Le tourisme, mes chers amis, il irrigue la France un peu comme un fleuve nourricier. Parce qu'en 2024, il y a eu plus de 100 millions de visiteurs qui ont généré 71 milliards d'euros de recettes, qui ont foulé nos territoires, découvert nos musées, goûté nos vins, séjourné dans nos hôtels, arpenté nos marchés et se sont attablés dans nos restaurants. Ils ont découvert nos savoir-faire aussi, et si j'ose dire, par les temps qui courent avec beaucoup de précautions quand même, mais ils ont goûté un peu aussi à l'art de vivre à la française. Et cette dynamique, elle génère une consommation directe ou indirecte qui soutient des milliers d'entreprises, des artisans aux restaurateurs, des guides, importants les guides, aux producteurs locaux. Le tourisme, et il faut en être fier parce que c'est un leadership mondial de la France. Et par les temps qui courent, ça fait du bien de se le dire. Le secteur touristique représente près de 8% de notre richesse nationale, avec plus de 2 millions d'emplois directs, des emplois permanents, mais pas que. C'est aussi beaucoup de pieds à l'étrier dans les périodes estivales, les périodes de tourisme. C'est aussi des jobs d'étudiants. C'est important de le signaler parce que c'est une aide aussi au pouvoir d'achat. Et le tourisme, mes chers amis, il porte notre croissance parce que la France, cette année, va faire 0,7 de croissance. Ce qui est quand même pas rien parce qu'on est quand même la première croissance des grands pays d'Europe, malgré l'instabilité politique. Voilà. Et on a quelques bons chiffres aussi qui sont sortis ce matin. Et cette croissance, elle est due en partie au tourisme, à l'activité touristique. Donc c'est un levier d'emploi aussi non délocalisable. Ça, c'est important. J'avais toujours... je me souviens, enfin, c'est une petite anecdote comme ça à ce propos, parce que j'avais un vieux collègue, ça vous dira peut-être rien, à la Tranche-sur-Mer en Vendée. C'est une station balnéaire où il y a 2000 habitants l'hiver et il y en a 100 000 l'été. Et lui disait, écoute Serge, c'est quand même bien ici parce que la mer, elle se délocalisera jamais, donc j'ai tout l'avenir devant moi, pour l'anecdote. Donc ça, c'est important parce que notre gastronomie, notre culture, les commerces de proximité profitent de cette non-délocalisation, de cette stabilité. Et pour les Français, le tourisme intérieur est aussi un vecteur de lien social, d'émancipation, d'ouverture, de tolérance, mais également de dynamisme local, avec 70% des dépenses qui viennent des Français eux-mêmes. Et le tourisme, il façonne aussi le quotidien de nos concitoyens, il irrigue les territoires et participe à l'équilibre économique de notre pays. Et il rend parfois, ça c'est important, parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'infrastructures aussi dans notre pays, en France, qui sont là parce qu'il y a cette activité touristique et dont les résidents permanents profitent toute l'année, qui n'existerait pas de cette manière-là s'il n'y avait pas le tourisme. Donc ça profite bien aussi, j'y fais le lien avec le quotidien des Français. Et dans un monde rempli d'instabilité et d'interrogations, le tourisme français, il est résilient et suit une dynamique très positive, alors depuis le début de l'année, mais pas que, parce que quand on regarde un peu l'histoire, on s'aperçoit que la croissance du tourisme en France, elle est assez linéaire, assez constante. En témoignent les chiffres du premier semestre 2025, avec des recettes du tourisme international en hausse de 13,7%, c'est quand même pas rien, par rapport à 2024, atteignant 37,3 milliards d'euros. Cette progression est soutenue par des clientèles européennes comme l'Allemagne ou les Pays-Bas, ou les marchés lointains aussi, comme les États-Unis ou le Japon. Et certains Cassandres annonçaient une mauvaise saison. Eh bien, pas du tout. Les vacanciers ont répondu présents tout l'été, des Français, des Danois, des Australiens, des Coréens, des Chinois, des Américains et des Canadiens. On peut remercier le président Trump de nous envoyer des touristes dans notre pays. Je tiens d'ailleurs à saluer le travail réalisé par les équipes d'Atout France, et singulièrement Christian Monteilly, ici présent, et Adam Houbi, qui sont présents dans la salle. Un grand merci. Et quand certains pays se replient sur eux-mêmes, les atouts de notre pays, de la Savoie à la Réunion, ils rayonnent, ils attirent. C'est une force française. Et par les temps qui courent, mes amis, on peut faire une lecture à l'envers, parce qu'on peut se dire que l'ouverture aux autres, c'est aussi une forme de leadership. Des atouts, des pépites, comme Notre-Dame de Paris, symbole de notre artisanat, de nos savoir-faire, les châteaux de la Loire, le Mont-Saint-Michel, qui est redevenu une île, le château de Versailles, la grotte de Lourdes ou le zoo de Beauval, qui nous montre que nous pouvons tisser des liens de bambou avec la Chine plutôt que des fils de polyester à usage unique. Voilà des partenariats intéressants et durables. Ces bons résultats ne doivent pas masquer les besoins de nos entreprises et nos défis communs pour le tourisme de demain. Et à l'instar d'autres secteurs économiques, les PME et les TPE du tourisme ont besoin de stabilité. C'est ce que cherche à faire ce gouvernement, proposer la stabilité, parce qu'on voit bien que tant qu'on est dans ces discussions budgétaires, on a hâte de les passer parce que tout le monde est un peu l'arme au pied sur les investissements, sur l'emploi. Et donc, il y a besoin d'aller vers cette stabilité. On doit à nos entreprises, et évidemment celles du tourisme ne font pas exception, un budget qui les sorte de l'incertitude. Ce budget, il doit les préserver, voire même les aider. En particulier, nous souhaitons respecter l'engagement de concertation acté lors du comité interministériel du tourisme autour d'une réforme de la taxe de séjour avec les socioprofessionnels, les associations d'élus. Le gouvernement sera défavorable à toute modification anticipée de la taxe de séjour. Nous avons besoin de renforcer la compétitivité de nos entreprises, libérer les énergies et les leviers de croissance pour le secteur. Je pense notamment à la simplification de la vie des entreprises, à la lutte contre les tensions de recrutement. Monsieur le Premier ministre, dans l'hôtellerie et la restauration, avec un vrai débat aussi qu'il faudra soutenir, parce qu'il faut avoir conscience qu'on a dans ce secteur des vraies difficultés de recrutement et qu'on a besoin d'emplois, et que voilà, il faudra aussi s'organiser pour ça. Il y a des tensions sur l'emploi. Et je n'oublie pas aussi l'intelligence artificielle qui transforme les métiers et les attentes des voyageurs. Et là, on a un soutien, parce que vous savez, en matière d'intelligence artificielle, la France est le premier pays d'Europe. On doit être les deuxièmes au monde, ce qui est quand même pas rien. Il faut là aussi, c'est deuxième leadership après le tourisme, l'intelligence artificielle. Et je veux saluer le travail que fait la Direction générale des entreprises à vos côtés, parce qu'il y a un test qui est fait à l'hôtel Ibis de Blois, donc c'est un hôtel, qui utilise un chatbox pour gérer les avis laissés par les clients. Donc ça, c'est opérationnel, c'est modélisable, et vous pouvez solliciter les services de l'État pour ça. Ils ont cette possibilité de vous accompagner, ou l'application Ask Mona, qui est une pépite de notre programme France Tourisme Tech, et qui permet aux visiteurs d'échanger en temps réel avec des œuvres d'art. Vous voyez que de ce point de vue-là, on est opérationnel. Ça, c'est bien de le dire, parce que parfois on nous dit on a un labour sur certains sujets, sur la tech. Ben, mes chers amis, sur l'IA, nous sommes en pointe. Il faut se le dire, parce que bon, ça fait du bien, là aussi, de mettre en avant nos pépites. Enfin, nous avons besoin d'objectifs communs et clairs, et j'en vois deux qui me semblent prioritaires. Nous pouvons collectivement atteindre l'objectif, c'est une ambition, des 100 milliards d'euros de recettes internationales d'ici 2030. C'est un chemin, une ambition. J'accompagne ce premier objectif de performance économique à une impérieuse nécessité, celle de la durabilité. Il faut qu'on soit dans ce domaine exemplaire. Il faut que le tourisme français soit aussi exemplaire pour tout ce qui concerne la transition climatique, écologique. Et je sais que notre secteur suscite certaines préoccupations quant à son impact environnemental, sociétal, avec la nécessaire transition du secteur, à la fois chez les professionnels comme chez les touristes. Je pense aux économies d'énergie, à la sobriété hydrique. C'est un engagement que je porte, moi, depuis de nombreuses années. Donc, avec vous, je veillerai à ce qu'on soit exemplaire dans ce domaine. Et mes amis, si on le fait aussi, on y a un intérêt. Parce que si nous sommes la première destination du monde et qu'en plus, nous avons tous les atouts pour respecter la transition écologique, ça sera une association qui va consolider notre leadership. Vraiment, je le pense vraiment que il faut qu'on porte ce message-là aussi. C'est très important. Je le dis pour tous les responsables du tourisme qui représentent notre pays dans ce secteur d'activité. J'y pense notamment à propos des JO d'hiver 2030, qui peuvent être aussi controversés de ce point de vue-là. Donc il faut aussi que les JO soient les JO du développement durable en 2030. C'est important, ils serviront aussi d'exemple. Et je pense aussi au développement de l'offre touristique en dehors des saisons, sur les ailes de la saison, à l'image de ma Vendée natale, dont la beauté se révèle autant sous le soleil d'été que dans la fraîcheur d'automne. Ou encore à des diversifications de notre notre offre touristique avec des potentiels importants. Je pense à l'agritourisme, agrotourisme. Ça, c'est important. C'est un peu le tourisme d'intérieur, le tourisme de première ligne. C'est vrai, il va plutôt bien à la mer, à la montagne. Mais on a aussi, je suis allé il y a quelque temps en Italie et en Espagne. Ils ont une offre d'agrotourisme très intéressante. Et c'est intéressant aussi pour le revenu des agriculteurs, parce que quand on mixe avec des chambres d'hôtes et de l'agritourisme, qui permettent aussi d'accueillir des enfants pour les former à la production, ils peuvent même aller faire des récoltes. Moi, j'étais en Espagne, j'ai participé à la récolte des olives. Ça, c'est quand même formidable parce qu'on peut tout associer, on fait de la pédagogie et tout. Donc, je vous invite à regarder de ce côté-là aussi. Puis, il y a le tourisme d'entreprise. Vous savez que beaucoup d'entreprises sont organisées pour faire des parcours. Elles ont même mettent en place des endroits où on peut observer. Donc, ça, c'est des choses un peu nouvelles, un peu innovantes. Et il faut les prendre en compte. Mesdames, Messieurs, il est des réalités si profondément ancrées dans le tissu de notre nation qu'elles semblent aller de soi. Et pourtant, elles méritent d'être célébrées. C'est ce que nous faisons ce matin. Interrogées et renforcées. Soyons fiers, surtout, soyons fiers de notre pays, qui est le pays le plus visité au monde. C'est quand même pas rien. Le tourisme français n'est pas seulement une industrie florissante, c'est aussi une espèce de respiration vitale en ce moment, si j'ose dire, une lumière qui éclaire nos villes, nos campagnes, nos montagnes, nos rivages et dans le monde. C'est un espèce de miroir dans lequel aussi se reflètent tous nos savoir-faire, notre art de vivre, notre patrimoine et sans doute notre avenir aussi. C'est très important. C'est une richesse, c'est une responsabilité. Il nous appartient de le préserver, de le réinventer, c'est ce que vous faites ce matin, de le faire grandir aussi. Et la France peut devenir la destination préférée des voyageurs du monde. C'est l'ambition que je voulais partager avec vous ce matin et je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Monsieur le Ministre, for this inaugural address to the forum. Now, if I'm right, I understood you as saying that tourism flows through France like a nourishing river. So it's great that you are very much reaffirming this country's commitment to an industry that continues to contribute so much to your economy and gives so much pleasure to the rest of the world. You addressed the importance of sustainability, thank you, and of diversifying the tourism portfolio, including sports tourism, which makes sense right now, right? And to quote you, I think it's a lovely quote, tourism in France is a vital breath, a light that illuminates our cities, our countryside, our mountains, our shores, and our place in the world. Thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you. Okay, time to get an overview of what is happening in the world and the world of travel. And as ever, the fortunes of the latter are very much intertwined with the former. Now, we're going to hear how travel and tourism can be a force for peace and progress as the day progresses. But let's hear first about the 10 forces reshaping global business today. And will Europe step up? And to deliver that presentation, can I please welcome to the stage Thomas Grotowski, MA, Director of the Center of Geopolitics for the Boston Consulting Group. Thomas.
Thank you very much for having me this morning. It's a true pleasure to talk about geopolitics on the day of a very important meeting on the other side of the world in South Korea, where Presidents Trump and Xi just talked this morning about stabilizing the most important relationship of the world that affects everyone, including us here in the room today. And so it's a true pleasure to discuss with you some of the geopolitical forces that are really shaping the business world today. At the Boston Consulting Group, we talk to hundreds of business leaders, of boards, about what are the issues really shaping operations across borders. What are the driving forces affecting their business? I will not go into all of them today, because I think we only have half an hour and not 3 hours. But I think for you to understand our thinking, where the world goes, I just want to highlight a few things. Number one, if you look at the first line, I think it's really important to note that the world is increasingly multipolar. It's not anymore a world where one power, perhaps the United States, or two powers, maybe the United States or the Soviet Union, or the United States and China alone, are able to shape the global business environment. No, it's a multitude of countries that need to be taken account of in global business today. Now, number two is multipolarity is a bit of a challenge, if you will, because it's a much less stable global environment than perhaps we were used to be. And so what we see is the emergence of what we would call economic battlegrounds, where great powers are increasingly competing for leadership, for influence, and for control over key strategic value chains. And lastly, a world of multipolarity also means that a world is much more exposed to shocks. Perhaps the ability to cooperate across borders, as perhaps it was during a unipolar moment when the United States was the dominant actor. The world we're entering is one that is much bumpier, much more at risk of global crises and conflicts. Now, I want to get into a few of those that I think are really the important drivers at the moment. And of course, I couldn't start here without mentioning what's going on in the United States. I think it has been breathtaking at the rate at which the United States, led by President Trump, has sought to change the global economic order. If you look at tariffs, the preferred tool of the Trump administration, we have seen that tariffs have been increased at a pace that we have not seen, and to a level that we have not seen basically since the end of the Second World War. Tariffs are now about 18% of all US imports. It was about 2.4% just at the beginning of the year. So it's a massive, massive change. And what is important is that tariffs are not only a tool for economic policy by the United States, they're also being used as a tool for geopolitical goals, such as economic security, influence, and control over key industries. Now, also importantly, tariffs will have cost. Cost for businesses, for consumers around the world. We looked at the top 10 trading partners of the United States, and we calculated that for those alone, the cost of the tariffs is more than $400 billion. That's roughly the size of the South African economy, which is that what consumers and businesses will have to, in one way or another, absorb. Can you not? Okay, sorry, I thought it was on. Okay. So I think that's really important. I think a last point to that. I think the United States as a destination for people to work, to travel, has really taken a hit in terms of its reputation, what we have seen. And I think America First policy in trade, coupled with America First policy in immigration, has really led to changing attitudes towards the United States as a destination, as we have seen over the last several months. Now, the United States is obviously an important market, but as I said, just from the meeting today, China matters tremendously. And if we look at what China has done over the last 5 to 10 years, it has tried to become a much more self-reliant, much more confident global player. It has really focused on innovation, on key strategic manufacturing sectors, and has tried to make itself much less dependent on Western countries. I think one important aspect to that is that whatever happens in China, whatever happens in the US-China relationship has an impact on us in Europe. And one of the critical areas where we can see that very clearly is China's control of the value chains of critical minerals. Now, this might sound far away for the travel industry, but I think it's actually tremendously important because China has developed a lever over the European economy that can really affect large segments of European production and European services industries. Now, the deal this morning seems to suggest that there might be some stabilization, but I think it's still important for us in Europe to understand what happens in China and in the US-China relationship really matters to us. Now, my third point, and here I want to talk about the Global South. The world is not only the large major economies in Europe, the United States, and in China. Actually, the world around Europe is changing tremendously. And it's not always driven by geopolitics, but also by demographics, by economics, and other factors. To give you one idea, at the beginning of the century, global economic growth largely came from what we would say are Western nations in North America, Europe, and Asia, like Japan and Korea. Now, fast forward to 2030, by then, 50% of global economic growth will come from the Global South. When Europe contributed around 22% to global economic growth at the beginning of the century, by the end of this decade, it will be India. So we have seen a dramatic change in how the rest of the world develops in terms of its economic size. And it's important also to note that China, over the last several years, has really become one of the key, actually, partners of many Global South economies. About 10 years ago, it was the largest trading partner for about 30 countries. Now it's the largest trading partner for more than 60. European companies are actually increasingly under pressure. So it's incredibly important to think what role Europe can play in its engagement with the Global South. Now, I think Europe has had quite a moment of reckoning this year. I think the continent perhaps was in one of the weakest economic spots it has ever been in decades. There was a prospect that the US and Russia would impose a security architecture on Europe. The European economy is obviously still struggling, and political fragmentation in Europe, be it in France, but also in my home country of Germany, where for almost the first half of the year we didn't have a government in place, obviously that is holding back Europe. Now, we looked at some of the trade deals that Europe has, or the trade deal that Europe has struck with the United States, and the agreement that Europe has struck in NATO to increase the defense target to 5% over 10 years. Many of them have been criticized. I would maybe say that they have been important, but they have been important in buying Europe time to get its house in order. Unfortunately, I need to say that Europe hasn't done enough so far. If you look at an important report that has become, if you will, the economic program of the European Commission, a report drafted by Mario Draghi, the former president of the ECB. We looked at that report and at its key indicators to see how much progress has Europe made. And unfortunately, we came to the conclusion that in 10 out of 17 of those indicators, Europe has fallen further behind. We have lost market share in export markets for goods and for services. Europe has become more dependent on China for critical minerals. Europe has not been able to get its industry back on a path towards growth. So it's really a picture where Europe needs to step up. Now, one area perhaps where we have seen most progress in Europe is defense. Now, you might wonder, why is it important for travel and tourism? I think one aspect is particularly important. If you look at what the plan is from today until 2029 for European defense budgets, you will see that by 2029, they will account for roughly the size of the US military budget today. A massive change. So perhaps a question that I would pose into the room. A more confident Europe, I think, is certainly an advantage. A Europe that is able to take care of its own security. What does it mean for Europe's image in the world? I hope Europe can use that in a way that really helps build its partnership and perhaps not become seen as a force that is perhaps seen as detrimental in some global affairs. Now, I talked about some economic partnerships already. The United States is obviously very important. We've seen that trade deal that stabilizes relations with the United States. But the United States is not the world. Actually, 85% of global trade takes place outside of the United States. We looked at some of the, we made our own forecasts, actually, of where European growth will grow over the next 10 years. And you will see that actually the biggest export markets will be, or the growth we'll see, will be biggest with countries like India, Mercosur, ASEAN, and others. And so it's a real positive, I think, that Europe has actually not stood still when it comes to its trade position. Over the last 10 or so months, Europe has struck a trade deal with Mercosur in South America, has struck a trade deal with Indonesia, and is about to finalize a trade deal with India, which means in about 12 months, Europe has opened the market to 2 billion consumers if those deals get implemented. That should be a platform, really, for Europe to rebuild and to deepen relationships with countries outside of the United States, outside of its traditional markets, perhaps, to seize growth opportunities that are growing in other parts of the world. Now, trade, you always think about goods trade, but actually, and I really want to emphasize this, services trade is actually the much more important driver of trade and growth in trade over the next decade. And travel is the number one driver, or travel and transport, the number one segment of global services trade. So we looked at, how services trade grew in the past, how it will grow over the next 10 years. And actually what you will see is that it will accelerate, number one. And number two, it will grow at roughly the double the pace that goods trade will grow. So really the opportunities are large. Travel and transport is expected to grow by around 4% over the next decade. Now, I quickly want to touch on technology, because I think technology is also an important part, actually, of the rise of cross-border services trade. Of course, at the moment, we have two, if you will, AI superpowers. It's the United States and it's China. But I believe Europe can play an important role as what we would say is an AI middle power if Europe really manages to use the size of its market, to use the strength of its 27 member states, to collaborate and to get its strength in a certain amount of critical AI technologies. Now, the other good thing is, it's not only about developing the technology of AI. I think increasingly it's about AI adoption And Europe and European services industry in particular can benefit tremendously from making sure that it keeps pace and maybe is faster than many other parts of the world in adopting AI. Now, of course, we couldn't talk about geopolitics without talking about some of the conflicts in the world. I think what we have seen over the last 12 months and years is really a rise in conflict, including in interstate conflict. Maybe surprisingly, the United States under President Trump has been actually more active than many thought in trying to manage some of those conflicts. But the Ukraine conflict hasn't been resolved, and our outlook is that it won't be anytime soon, unfortunately. The Gaza conflict has perhaps been put into an icebox for now, and we'll see what happens, but it remains fragile. But nonetheless, there is hope that some of those conflicts can be resolved and can actually lead to new partnerships, including in the Middle East, where we have seen actually very significant changes. Of course, for the travel industry, it will matter a lot, not only where conflicts take place, but also what perceptions of people are about the safety of different locations around the world. And lastly, just to make a last quick point, which I think is really relevant in Europe, what we have seen is an increasing polarization within our countries. Polarization that is driven by a sentiment that our economies are struggling, that our institutions aren't working. And so I think the travel and tourism industry has a real role to play as a driver of growth in also making sure that our political and economic coherence within Europe stays strong. Now, just a couple of quick thoughts on what that means for international business. I think it's really important for international business to really think about how actually does geopolitical factors affect my corporate strategy and to incorporate those into corporate strategy. Thinking about the next growth opportunities, thinking about new partnerships, and thinking about what role technology can play in that. And with this, I will thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thomas, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So there we have it, a bumpier world of unstable multipolarity, military conflict, accelerated climate change, tariffs at their highest in 75 years. The US has taken a hit as a destination. A confident global south is becoming an engine, a huge engine of economic growth. There's a huge rise in the middle-class independent travelers from India and China. Well, the economies first, but then that leads to travelers, which we're already seeing, I think. And cross-border services are set to grow twice as fast as goods, with travel and tourism leading the way. So there is a summary, an opportunity, and a challenge. So is Europe, and indeed France, going to step up? Well, it's my great honor now to welcome somebody who has been in the past at the helm of positioning France as a global leader, is still a hugely influential figure in Parliament, and if the whispers are right, maybe aiming to return front and center of the political stage next year. We'll see. So, Member of Parliament, former Prime Minister, and Member of Parliament of the Republic of France, I beg your pardon, welcome, to use your official title, Prime Minister Gabriel Attal. Please take your seat.
Dear Minister, dear Serge Papin, ladies and gentlemen, it's a truly pleasure and an honor to take part to a World for Travel, one of the, if not the most important gathering of tourism leaders in the world. I want to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to Frédéric Van Hout, president of the Aventis Group, and to Christian Delhomme, Secretary General for A World for Travel. Their vision and their passion have turned this event into a vital bridge between ideas and action. And I want to salute my friend, Pascal Fontenelle-Persson, a major force for tourism in France, whose commitment made it possible for me to be with you this morning. France is the world's #1 tourist destination. It is the homeland of tourism, of hospitality, of a certain art of living that we are very proud of. And as a former Prime Minister of France, tourism has always been close to my heart, because it is part of our identity, because it is a pillar of our economy, not only in France, but across all Europe. And because tourism is one of the most revealing indicators of a nation's vitality and confidence. A country that welcomes travelers is a country that's alive, vibrant, and attractive. A country whose people go on vacation is a country that feels confident and optimistic. So it is no coincidence that the theme you choose for this edition is Tourism Faces Uncertainty. Because yes, we are living through a period of uncertainty unlike anything we've known over the last decades. Geopolitical instability has never had such a direct impact on travelers' behavior. Conflict zones are multiplying, and even Europe is no longer untouched. Rivalries between nations influence where citizens choose to travel. Some leaders even push their citizens to turn their back on certain destinations. The sharp drop in international visitors to the United States since Donald Trump's re-election is one clear example of that. The global economic slowdown has also hit families hard, and when budget gets tight, tourism spending is often the first to go. At the same time, people's expectations are changing, especially in light of the major challenges we all face, and climate change is at the top of that list. Let me give you one example: air travel. I was born in 1989. My generation grew up seeing flying as an extraordinary opportunity, a chance to discover Europe, to open ourselves to the world. But the younger generations today, as every study shows, often hesitate to fly because they are aware of its environmental impact. And yet, I want to share my conviction. This period of uncertainty must not and will not be a time of defeat. We must not be a moment of regression where tourism becomes a privilege for the few. On the contrary, I believe we are entering a period of reinvention. Tourism has always shown resilience. It has always been clear about creativity, about courage, about innovation. And the time we are living, I believe, will be no exception. To move forward, we'll have to face several key challenges. The first one, I'm convinced, is meaning. Because meaning is one of the deepest aspirations of today's youth. Traveling is not neutral. It carries responsibility to the people we meet, to the places we visit, and to the planet we share. Travelers today, and even more tomorrow, are no longer looking only for a trip. They are looking for an experience. They no longer want to just visit a country. They want to understand it. They no longer want to be locked inside hotels or tourist neighborhoods that they feel detached from reality. They want to share something authentic, to be a part of everyday life with the people who live there. But this quest for meaning also means answering more diverse expectations. There is no longer one single model of tourism. From the most luxurious hotels to the most modest guest houses, travelers want personalization. They want something that reflects who they are and what they value. The desire for tailored experiences is one of the deepest shifts in our societies. Tourism must adapt to it and must embrace it. The second great challenge, which is inseparable from meaning, is sustainability. Tourism in the 21st century will be sustainable or it won't exist. Because the ecological transition, the green transition, must drive every major transformation in our economies, and tourism is no exception. Sustainability is not just about a consumer demand. It's also about long-term competitiveness and about your capacity to thrive in the future. Many of you have already begun this journey. You know that the goal must be carbon neutrality. You know that some activities and consumption models must evolve. And I believe the next frontier goes beyond simply polluting less. It's about regenerating more. It's about making tourism a force for renewal, a force for repair, a force for sustainability. The first challenge we face is innovation and technology. A profound transformation is already on the way. AI is reshaping the way people dream about, plan, and experience their trips. For you, it's a new way of working, a chance to optimize flows, to reduce waste, to personalize offers, and to anticipate needs. AI will soon be everywhere, from the screen where we book our flights to the smart systems that run our hotel rooms. Tourism has become a hub for innovation. New services, new tools, new professions emerge. But here too we'll have to find, I think, the right balance. Because there's a tension between technology and hospitality. Hospitality will always be an art, the art of care, of attention, of connection. No machine can replace that. Technology should enhance humanity and never erase it. The fourth challenge is skills. Once again, your professions are evolving. Certain needs, particularly those linked to data or booking management, are fading away as automation expands. Others persist, especially in restaurants, in cleaning, in maintenance. These are demanding jobs with difficult hours, requiring effort, resilience, and sacrifice. A fewer young people today are drawn to these jobs. So there's a real revolution to lead, a transformation in how we value this profession, how we value these jobs. Your sectors need to rethink how to remain attractive, how to offer better pay, better working conditions, and how to align with the expectations of a generation that seeks purpose and flexibility. Because these are noble professions, professions that make people feel welcome, that create beauty and happiness. They deserve recognition, training, and investments. And then there's the last great challenge, transportation. I mentioned air travel earlier because so often some political leaders promote a vision of the future where we should all stay at home. A future where we stop moving, stop exploring, stop discovering. I don't believe in that future. I don't think it's desirable, and I don't think it's what people desire. I believe we must be the builders of solutions, not prophets of resignation. That's why, instead of giving up on air travel, I call for the creation of a green airplane, a European green airplane, a low-carbon aircraft that allows everyone to keep traveling freely without harming the planet. And I'm convinced that my country, France, must make this a national priority and invest massively in research and development to make it happen. But it's not only about planes. We need in France and across Europe a bold and coherent strategy to decarbonize all forms of transport, to strengthen rail networks, to make clean cars affordable to everyone, to build more bike paths and sustainable mobility options. We must act, and act boldly on all fronts. Ladies and gentlemen, these 5 challenges concern the whole world. But I'm convinced that France and Europe have everything they need, not only to face them, but to turn them into strength. France and Europe can lead. They can set the pace for global tourism in this new century. Why? Because we can offer an extraordinary diversity of landscapes and experiences that no other part of the world can match. Because we have centuries of expertise and tradition recognized and admired everywhere. Because we have strong, creative, innovative players, you, who give life to this industry every day. And because, thanks to the European Union, we have the ability to act together and to strike hard. To succeed, we must trust. You must be given the freedom to reinvent, to rebuild, to experiment. You don't need more rules. You need a direction, a framework, and the space to innovate. You need governments that give you the tools to adapt, not the way of over-regulation. To succeed, you also need support. When I was Prime Minister, I launched a major national tourism plan in France, with dedicated funds for sustainable tourism and for e-tourism. That's the kind of backing your industry needs today. Strong support from governments and Europe. And in times like these, when every euro spent must be meaningful, let's be clear. Every euro spent on tourism is useful. It's an investment that creates jobs, boosts economies, and strengthens the image of our nation around the world. Finally, if we want to succeed, we need to coordinate. We need to bring our strengths together and build a true Europe of tourism. Earlier today, you heard a presentation about the key question, will Europe step up? I share that question. In fact, I believe it is one of the most important, if not the most important question of the coming years. We are living in a world where rivalries between nations are returning at full speed. A world whose only language is power. And those who don't speak about power are bound to disappear. We are living in an age of growing confrontation, where every field has become a stage of competition between nations. In this world, every European country has its strengths, and France in particular. I'm thinking of our innovation, our defense industry, our aerospace sectors, and of course, I'm thinking about our gastronomy, our history, our sense of service and hospitality. And if there's one thing Europe's nations all share, it's tourism potential, the ability to attract, to welcome, to bring the entire world to our doors. 3 of the most visited countries on earth are members of the European Union: France, Spain, and Italy. Only together, they welcome nearly 250 million tourists every year. That's 3.5 more than the United States, 4.5 more than China. The European Union is not a tourism giant, it is the tourism giant. Our lead is not small. As the American president would say, it's huge. We must turn that lead into a weapon, a positive one, serving our economies, our nations, our people. We must turn it into a source of influence, of growth, of strength.